When I need emergency spinal surgery, I was 26 years old. I'm only 3 months into my residency in surgery. For weeks, the agony had been intolerable. When my parents informed me that Vanessa's college graduation was more important than their own, they were unable to attend. I felt something shatter inside. I was in the hospital by myself for 5 days, aside from Daniel, my boyfriend. 9 years have passed since then. I walked into the new staff orientation this morning after adjusting my chief of surgery badge. They are smiling nervously while seated in the front row. Did my sister Vanessa not realize that I was her new boss prior to delving into the tale that permanently altered my life? Tell me in the comments where you're viewing from. In your own family, have you ever felt invisible? Click like and subscribe to become a part of our community of people recovering from familial trauma. Let me now take you back to the beginning. Growing up in Portland, Oregon. Vanessa was the gregarious star, and I was always the quiet, industrious sister. We established our dynamic early on. Vanessa was born when I was 6 years old. From that point on, our family's focus was irreversibly changed. I had already come to terms with the fact that my sister's activities would always take precedence over my accomplishments by the time I was 10 years old. My project on the functions of heart valves took first place in the regional science fair that year. At the last minute, Vanessa's dancing performance was moved to the same afternoon, even though my parents had already committed to going. My mother, Catherine, had stated that we would attempt to attend following her performance. However, they never appeared. I accepted my certificate by myself while looking around the audience for faces I couldn't see. The trend persisted into my adolescence. In my junior year of high school, I was accepted into the National Honor Society. In order to assist Vanessa in getting ready for her freshman prom, my parents did not attend the event. Rebecca, it's only a certificate. Your sister only gets one first prom, according to my father, Martin. They completely forgot about my 16th birthday because it fell on the same weekend as Vanessa's soccer competition in Seattle. Daniel's mother had sent over a cupcake with thoughtful candles, which I blew out. At the age of 10, I shattered my arm after falling from a tree in our garden, which sparked my interest in medicine. I was initially intrigued to the field after hearing the orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Miller, carefully and respectfully describe the healing process to me. By the time I was 12, I had saved up my allowance money and accumulated a library of medical texts. I worked as a volunteer at Providence Portland Medical Center during my high school years, first in the gift shop and then as a pediatric floor nurse's shadow. My parents hardly ever acknowledged my desire to pursue a career in medicine. Despite my flawless grades and obvious enthusiasm, doctors have no life and work too much. Every time I brought up medical school, my father would disregard me. All of Vanessa's interests, however, were viewed as opportunities for professional advancement. When I preferred studying to social gatherings, my mother would often ask, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" From her brief time in debate club to her summer experiment with photography. Vanessa is adept at striking a balance between leisure and accountability. My mother was unaware that I was juggling volunteer work and 2 jobs while keeping my GPA at 4.0. The most annoying aspect was that Vanessa appeared to be totally oblivious to the imbalance, leaving little time for the parties she frequently attended. She'd briskly enter my room, talking about how, that same week, Mom and Dad had offered to pay for her spring break vacation. They had informed me that they were unable to assist with the costs of my college application. My parents' response to my receiving a full scholarship to attend Oregon State University for pre-med was, at best, indifferent. I like that, honey. After saying that, my mother abruptly shifted the topic to Vanessa's impending volleyball competition. That evening at dinner, my research was worthy of about 2 minutes of conversation before the conversation shifted back to Vanessa's social life for the rest of the meal. My getaway was college. In order to pay for expenses that were not covered by my scholarship, I worked part-time at the school medical center and waited tables on the weekends. I was desperate to get into medical school, so I kept up straight A's despite my demanding schedule. Daniel, a tall man with gentle brown eyes, and I met him in an organic chemistry class. On the first day, he asked to be my lab partner and sat next to me. Daniel, in contrast to my family, recognized my brilliance and diligence right away. After seeing me help struggling classmates, he told me, "You're going to be a fantastic doctor someday." His steadfast faith in my skills was alien and euphoric. I felt what true support was like for the first time. Daniel was working for a medical technology degree, and our professional trajectories were a wonderful fit. We became inseparable by our junior year, going to the library late at night to study and getting coffee early in the morning before classes. Throughout college, the trend with my family persisted. Over the course of 4 years, my parents made exactly 3 campus visits, all of which coincided with Vanessa's local cheering events. Spending holidays at home meant listening to Vanessa's social adventures dominate dinner conversations. I briefly discussed my accomplishments, such as earning the dean's list, landing competitive research positions, and getting admitted to esteemed summer programs, before the topic inexorably returned to Vanessa. I first became aware of the early symptoms of my spinal issue during my final year of college. I began to experience growing back pain, which I attributed to spending so much time bent over textbooks and occasional numbness in my legs after extended study sessions. Upon my eventual appointment to the school physician, the initial assessment indicated possible disc problems, nothing pressing, but something to keep an eye on while you complete your study, the doctor had told me. I brushed the warning aside in order to concentrate on my applications to medical school and worry about what appeared to be a small inconvenience. In the years that followed, I would come to bitterly regret that choice. I was excited and disappointed at the same time when I was accepted to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. My mother's immediate reaction when I contacted them to share the news was, "That's on the East Coast, isn't it? You'll be a long way off, no congrats, no arrogance, just worry about the distance." My father took the whole family out to a celebration supper the same week Vanessa landed a marketing internship with a nearby sportswear firm. There was no mention of my entrance to medical school. Daniel transferred to a hospital lab job in Baltimore once in the evening after receiving his degree in medical technology, allowing us to move together. As we packed our flat, he assured me, "I believe in us, and you have my faith." It was liberated to relocate across the nation. The regular reminders of my inferior position in the family hierarchy were lessened by distance. My weekly phone conversations with my parents grew shorter and frequently ended when Vanessa needed their immediate attention. Medical school exceeded my expectations in every way. I flourished in the demanding setting and soon set myself apart from my contemporaries. In my sophomore year, I had the good fortune to attract the interest of Dr. Eleanor Winston, a trailblazing neurosurgeon renowned for her innovative work in spinal surgeries. She took me under her wing, offering mentorship that satisfied the lack of parental leadership I had felt all my life. After witnessing my first help of the year, Dr. Winston told me, "You have extraordinary hands and intuition. More significantly, though, you are compassionate. It's a unique and desirable combo." As I advanced in my medical studies, my physical health, however, declined. I started experiencing numbness in my legs more often. The severity of the back pain increased to the point where daily pain medication was necessary to function. I was hiding a serious health condition from everyone but Daniel and Dr. Winston when I started my residency at Johns Hopkins Hospital. In my 3rd month of residency, an MRI showed the reality. I had been delaying a serious disc herniation that needed surgery right away. I ran the risk of irreversible nerve damage and possibly ending my surgical career before it had really started if I didn't have surgery. Dr. Winston suggested that we set up this appointment right away after carefully going over my scans. "I will carry out the process myself. But while you're recovering, Rebecca, you'll need help. You cannot handle this on your own, particularly if you wish to go back into the residency program as soon as possible." I took advantage of a little lull in my rotation schedule to arrange the operation for the following month. I anticipated my family to be there for me through this important procedure, even though we had a tense relationship. Despite years of disappointment, I found myself yearning for the warmth of my parents' presence. Yet the procedure involved dangers of infection, nerve damage, and anesthesia-related issues. I called home to explain the issue a month prior to the planned surgery. When my mother responded, I went into great length about the process, the dangers, and the anticipated 6-week recuperation time. "Rebecca." "Oh, When I was done talking, I turned to my mother's side. Vanessa's college graduation takes place on the same weekend. I felt sick to my stomach. This is significant surgery. Mom, I'll require assistance once I'm discharged from the hospital, where I'll be for at least 5 days. For the graduation weekend, we have already reserved the rental home and the flights. Her voice was tight with frustration as she answered. Vanessa has put forth a lot of effort to get here. I haven't, but I held the phone closer. Mom, if this doesn't work out, I might suffer irreversible nerve damage. I'm requesting your help, for once. Then, in a protective tone, my father answered the phone. Be sensible, Rebecca. The graduation of your sister is a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. It's a standard process that doctors do on a daily basis. It's not routine to me, I responded, raising my voice in shock. It's me who is being sliced open. Your operation is not as important as your sister's graduation. My mother made a firm interjection. There. She needs us. In any case, you're always so self-sufficient. Years' worth of pent-up animosity suddenly surged to the surface. When was the last time you picked me? When have my needs or accomplishments ever taken precedence? I'm undergoing extensive surgery, and you think it's more significant to watch Vanessa traverse a stage for tens of thousands of people? Avoid being theatrical. My dad dismissed. Now you're a doctor. You know how these things operate. I completely understand, I said in a chilly tone. I am aware that this family has never prioritized me and never will. After hanging up, I sobbed and fell on the ground. Daniel came across me there, finally confronting the reality of my position in my family's affections. I curled into a ball an hour later. My parents gave me one last call the day before my operation. They were staying at a rental home on the beach in California for Vanessa's graduation. For the occasion, they had indulged in luxury, just checking in before tomorrow's operation. There were the background noises of a celebration. According to my mother, Vanessa would like to wish my sister luck. Came on the line for a moment. She slurred her words a little from what I thought was champagne. Hello, Becca. I wish you success with your back issue. We have parties all weekend, so don't worry if you don't hear from me. I'll try to phone you later. I gave her a courteous thank you and hung up. The pain I had experienced before was replaced by an odd numbness. I put down the phone and Daniel clasped my hand. I'll be there all the way through, he pledged. You're not by yourself. Dr. Winston saw that my pre-op room and family were missing on the morning of the procedure. She asked softly, Just Daniel today. There was a dispute in my family. It was easier for me to respond with a lie than to convey the reality. I could see from Dr. Winston's expression that she understood more than I did. You have relatives here, too. Firmly, she said. Your family at the hospital. Throughout my recuperation, Olivia, the nurse assigned to my case, went above and above by checking on me during her breaks and bringing tiny comforts from home. A herbal tea and a softer pillow, audio recordings, to occupy my time when I was awake due to pain, when I got a post-surgical infection. My hospital stay that was supposed to last 5 days ended up lasting 8. The ache was unbearable. I felt really sick from the antibiotics, and I was always afraid that I may get hurt. My phone was silent the entire time. My parents didn't call. Vanessa didn't text. For 3 full days following the procedure, Daniel received worried messages from friends and coworkers, but no word from my family. A generic bouquet with the card, "Get well soon," arrived on the 4th day, while I was still struggling with the worst of the infection. Love, Vanessa, Dad, and Mom. Not a private message. No phone call to go along with it. Simply flowers that could have been delivered to any hospital acquaintance. I made a choice that would transform my life that night, by myself in my hospital room, while Daniel had gone home to take a shower and change. I would no longer look for or demand approval from those who are reluctant to provide it. Those who showed there would be the foundation of my existence, not my blood relatives. It was a very sad and liberating realization. It was difficult to grieve for the familial bond I had always desired but had come to terms with would never materialize due to my physical recuperation from spine surgery. I was hardly able to move without help for the first 2 weeks. Daniel took a leave of absence from his job to help with everything from bathing to meal preparation after he moved into my apartment. We celebrated every little accomplishment together, such as sitting up pain-free, walking to the bathroom without assistance, and getting a full night's sleep, as the important milestone it was. Marcus, my physical therapist, also proved to be a rock during those trying months. My strength and mobility were gradually restored during twice-weekly sessions. During one especially difficult session, he said, "Your determination is impressive. It takes a lot longer for most people undergoing your kind of surgery to meet these standards," I stated, enduring another round of exercises in spite of the searing discomfort that I had a residency to return to. Marcus gave a knowing smile. "It goes beyond that. You have a claim to make." He was not mistaken. Every challenging step ahead was motivated by a strong desire to establish my value to myself, if no one else, as well as by professional ambition. During my recuperation, I experienced a growing tension in communication with my family. Along with a generic card, my mother brought flowers. When my father called, he talked about Vanessa's job interviews at marketing firms for the most of the call. He boasted that she had already had 3 proposals. Her portfolio had everyone blown away. "That's fantastic," I gave a bland response, too worn out from physical therapy to fake excitement. "How is the situation with your back as an afterthought?" he asked. "My recuperation from spinal surgery is going well," I corrected him. "In another month, I should be able to resume limited duty." He answered absently, "Oh, good. Listen, your mom wants to know if you will be spending Thanksgiving at home. Vanessa's new boyfriend is coming. She desires for everyone to meet." I let the old disappointment wash over me and closed my eyes. By then, "I doubt I'll be allowed to travel. That's terrible," my dad said. He sounded relieved. Then it might be Christmas. In the meantime, Vanessa's social media was a flurry of posts about beach vacations with pals, graduation parties, and interviews with fantastic firms with incredible cultures. In one especially tone-deaf post, she made no mention of my surgery or rehabilitation. She claimed to have had a minor ankle injury during a trek, the worst ache I've ever experienced. After another call in which my mother spent 20 minutes describing Vanessa's new apartment before making a clumsy inquiry about my health, I can hardly move without sobbing. I decided to keep touch to a minimum. I stopped making calls, gave succinct, truthful responses to SMS, and turned down the Christmas offer, stating that I had business commitments instead of continuing rehabilitation requirements. Both physical and emotional recovery were made possible by the distance. I went back to my surgical residency 3 months following the procedure with fresh perspective and a fresh sense of purpose. My perspective on medicine has changed as a result of my experience as a patient. I could now relate to patients' feelings of vulnerability, fear, and loneliness, especially for those without support networks. Dr. Eleanor remained particularly interested in my growth, asking me to help with challenging cases and helping me focus on spinal procedures. "You get knowledge from your own experience that medical school cannot impart." She watched as I gave advice to a terrified preoperative patient. "Now you can communicate with them." Dr. Lawrence Mitchell, the hospital's director, also took notice of my performance. "Winston thinks well of you." He brought it up during a departmental meeting. "Claims that you have the capacity to be extraordinary." I used my emotional energy to create a new network of support. Weekly dinners with Jordan and Melissa, 2 other residents, became into a highlight as we all discussed the particular challenges and victories of surgical training. Daniel was still my pillar. His research serves as a continual reminder that there was real support on my surgery's 1-year anniversary. Over a peaceful supper at home, Daniel proposed. He held up a plain solitaire ring and remarked, "You're the strongest person I know. Additionally, I want to live my entire life with you." Dr. Eleanor developed into more than just a guide. She turned into the maternal figure I had been longing for. She offered advice without comparison, recognized my accomplishments without reservation, and gave me the unwavering support I had never known from my biological mother. I started therapy with Dr. Sarah Coleman, a psychologist who specializes in family trauma. 6 months after I recovered, during my medical crisis, our weekly sessions turned into a safe haven for processing years of emotional neglect and the profound betrayal of my parents' absence. In one session, Dr. Coleman described what you were saying as a classic golden child scapegoat scenario. Because of the family structure your parents established, Vanessa's needs were always given priority, no matter what. However, why I posed the query that had troubled me since I was a young child. Why should they pay greater attention to her? Deserving is rarely the issue, said Dr. Coleman kindly. These tendencies frequently emerge for causes unrelated to the kids. Maybe Vanessa's needs were just more obvious and louder than yours. Or maybe her personality reflected qualities they appreciated. I learned how to set up good boundaries, how to validate myself, and how to deal with rage in a healthy way through therapy. Instead, than allowing it to devour me, family interactions became infrequent and surface level. Phone conversations throughout the holidays were short and kept to safe subjects. I chose to celebrate with Daniel and my selected family of friends and coworkers instead of accepting invites to family get-togethers. My parents appeared to gradually come to terms with the fact that things had altered irrevocably. During our few discussions, my mother's voice became confused and occasionally hurt, in an unusual display of solicitude. My father inquired about my work with uncomfortable curiosity. Vanessa occasionally texted, mainly to complain about our parents or to ask for medical advice. "Why are you making visiting so difficult?" Once, she inquired. "You're usually too busy for family these days, according to Mom." I made no effort to clarify. I no longer had the energy to explain to her what she had never bothered to see. And the gap between our experiences felt too great to be filled with text messages. My professional confidence returned along with my physical strength. After nearly being derailed by injury, the surgeon was now stronger, more driven, and with a depth of empathy that set me apart from my peers. My desire for outside approval had been destroyed by the anguish, which also left me with a resilience I was unaware I had. My career took a dramatic turn in the years after my surgery. My evaluations at the end of my surgical residency put me in the top percentile of graduates. My personal experience guided my attention on spinal surgeries, which resulted in the creation of a minimally invasive approach that cut recovery time by about 30% during the second year after my residency. I was getting calls to speak at conferences all over the nation and had research published in 3 prestigious medical publications. Prestigious hospitals in Boston, Chicago, and San Francisco extended job offers, each promising cutting-edge facilities and a great deal of autonomy. I decided to remain at Johns Hopkins, where Dr. Eleanor worked, in spite of the alluring offers. "You can get a better deal elsewhere." When I discussed my choice with her, she acknowledged, "Here. However, you are allowed to create anything significant." She was correct. Financial incentives elsewhere were outweighed by the opportunity to continue learning from my mentor, the familiarity of the facility, and the relationships I had developed. 4 years following my operation, Daniel and I were married in a quiet ceremony at the Baltimore Botanical Gardens. Dr. Eleanor delivered a speech that is often given by the bride's mother. She spoke in a captivating way as she talked about how she saw me develop from a bright student to a superb surgeon and a beloved friend. Among the guests at the wedding, my parents were uneasy. They failed to identify friends who had grown into family over the years, co-workers, and other surgeons. During the reception, Vanessa's boyfriend Travis made improper remarks and drank too much champagne. Daniel's brother eventually begged him to leave. Your pals take their friendship very seriously. During the reception, my mother made a remark while pointing to a group of neurosurgeons having a lively discussion. Are they incapable of having a good time at a wedding? They're talking about a novel technique that last week saved the life of a child. I gave a balanced response because I think it's more intriguing than small conversation. My mother's mouth tensed, but she remained silent. Even I was shocked by how quickly I proceeded to grow professionally. I was the youngest attending surgeon in the neurosurgery department at the age of 32. I was regarded and in high demand because of my reputation for accepting challenging patients that other surgeons turned down. I developed a spinal surgery recovery support program based on my personal experience as a patient, matching up current patients with prior patients who could offer both emotional and practical help. The program significantly raised patient satisfaction ratings and decreased readmission rates. I started coaching incoming residents, emphasizing both technical proficiency and compassionate care. The scalpel is merely an instrument. I would tell them that what makes you a healer is your humanity. I was asked to give a presentation at the International Spinal Surgery Conference every year. My sessions, which are often among the most watched movies of my creative methods, were utilized to instruct hospitals all throughout the nation. As my reputation in the workplace increased, there was an odd change in the dynamics of my family, in ways they had never done before. My parents started to notice or at least acknowledge my accomplishment. Rebecca constantly stands out for her determination and ambition. During a rare visit home, my mother told her acquaintances at a neighborhood fundraiser I went to, "We were always certain that she will achieve great things." Hearing her rewritten past almost made me choke on my drink, but I remained silent. I no longer felt worthy of the approval I so badly sought as a young person. My dad became interested in telling his golf friends about medical treatments. He would say that my daughter invented that method, and family friends would humorously recount these exchanges back to me. Vanessa's career, meanwhile, took a less clear course. She never stayed at one business for more than 18 months, often switching between marketing roles. After 3 years, she and Travis had a tumultuous breakup that included accusations and shared property. As our chats became less regular, Vanessa became more and more dissatisfied with her career. During one phone conversation, she admitted, "I just feel like I haven't found my calling yet." For the first time, everything seemed so pointless. She started inquiring about opportunities in healthcare. "Which positions in hospitals do not require a medical degree during a holiday call?" she asked. "I'm considering changing things." I went to my parents' house for the first time in a long time for a holiday get-together 5 years after my operation. Beneath the elaborately planned feast and celebratory decorations, the strain was evident. My mother made a toast with her glass at supper. "To both of my accomplished daughters," she remarked with a big smile. "Rebecca, the surgeon, and Catherine, the marketing genius. I'm really proud, as is your dad." I couldn't control my reaction to her obvious attempt to compare our wildly disparate portions and portray herself as a parent who supports both of us equally. Calmly, I put down my drink and added, "It's interesting to hear you say that. Considering that you informed me that Vanessa's college graduation was more significant than accompanying me through surgery that would change my life." There was silence at the table. My dad shifted in his chair uneasily. Vanessa appeared perplexed. At last, my mother stated in a tense voice, "That was a difficult situation. We couldn't breach our agreements. You have 2 things to do. As usual, you choose one above the other," after I corrected her. "Before we raise a glass to our history, I just want to clarify it. It was the first time I had ever had an open discussion regarding the familial dynamics that had influenced my early years and early adulthood. For the first time, the reality of our relationships was put directly on the table. Even if it was awkward and left many things unanswered, I no longer wanted to play up with the idea that we were a close-knit family, momentarily split up by my hard job. My parents finally acknowledged, if not entirely accepted, the fact that I had been consistently deprioritized throughout my existence. Even though that conversation was challenging, it was a turning moment toward authenticity rather than exactly toward reconciliation. Maybe we could be honest with one another about who we truly were, even though we would never be the stereotypical family. An unforeseen chance that would once again change my career and personal landscape presented itself 8 years following my operation. The announcement of Dr. Eleanor's retirement rocked the neurosurgery department, where she had worked for more than 20 years. Over dinner at her house, where we had started meeting once a month for professional mentoring that had developed into a close friendship, she told me, "I've given my best years to this hospital. I now want to enjoy the years I have left to live." Even more shocking than her declaration of retirement was what she said next. "I've suggested you to be my chief of surgery successor," she said. "The board is thinking about you and Thompson, and they're keeping a close eye on my response." Dr. Thompson had a stellar record and was 15 years my senior. It felt almost ridiculous that I would be given the same consideration as him for such a distinguished job. I objected that I was too young. "I've only been an attending for 6 years, but in that time, you've saved more impossible patients, published more research, and created more creative methods than Thompson did in 15." Eleanor shot back, "Age is only a numerical value. What matters are vision and talent." It was a demanding interview procedure. Both applicants were heavily questioned by the hospital board about technical expertise, department vision, management, and philosophy. Dr. Thompson highlighted his years of experience and his connections to hospital management. Instead, I concentrated on innovation, my strategies for incorporating new technologies, enhancing recovery protocols to improve patient outcomes, and increasing research opportunities for deserving residents. The board spent 2 weeks deliberating. The final vote had been close, according to Dr. Lawrence, who had followed my career since residency, until he showed me my patient outcome statistics in comparison to the national average. He claimed that the numbers were self-evident. Your patients report greater satisfaction, fewer issues, and quicker recovery. At 35, we need that kind of leadership. In the history of the hospital, I was the youngest chief of surgery. The news triggered a story called "The Rising Star of Neurosurgery" in the Journal of American Medicine, which highlighted my quick rise in creative methods. In my capacity as chief, I created a mentorship program that paired seasoned surgeons with bright medical students from underrepresented backgrounds, and I instituted new departmental procedures that were directly based on patient experience and mandated that all surgeons personally follow up with patients within 48 hours of procedures. Daniel's support and pride were unwavering. "Testing the sound of my new title with a smile has a nice ring to it," said Dr. Rebecca Mitchell, chief of surgery. Dr. Eleanor had a celebration luncheon at her house 3 months after I started my new job. Only Daniel, I, and our host were there for the small party, and after dinner, he gave me a velvet box. It contained a set of surgical tools with mother-of-pearl inlay on the handles. "My mentor gave these to me when I became chief," Eleanor said. Her eyes are hazy. "They have carried out hundreds of life-saving operations. They are yours now." Later that night, while enjoying coffee in Eleanor's garden, we had a chat that summed up my experience since that disastrous surgery 9 years prior. Eleanor said carefully, "You know, when those who ought to help us fail or are unable to do so, the universe occasionally makes up for it by delivering us the right person at the right time." I reflected on how she had filled the gap left by my parents by offering direction, encouragement, and unwavering faith in my potential. I believe I've finally come to terms with it. I acknowledge it. I've given up hoping they'll be the parents I needed. That's the last phase of recovery. She gave a nod. The discussion turned to my ideas for growing the department and establishing new research opportunities after you no longer need the wound to close any differently than it did. I felt personally healed and professionally fulfilled for the first time in my life. The deep relationships I had developed and the worthwhile work I did every day had eclipsed the resounding echo of rejection from family to a dim memory. My mother called me out of the blue 3 months after I took over as chief. Her apprehensive tone instantly alerted me to the strange time mid-afternoon on a Tuesday. She finally got to the reason for her call after a few minutes of atypical small talk about the weather and her garden club. With hesitation, she said, "Your sister has some exciting news." "Oh," I replied while half listening to my computer's surgical timetables. "Vanessa has finished a healthcare administration certification program." My mom went on. "She has submitted applications for jobs at a number of hospitals in the Baltimore region." I froze my fingers on the keyboard. "Baltimore." My mother verified that. "Johns Hopkins is one among them." "That is a beautiful coincidence, isn't it naturally?" It wasn't a coincidence. However, whether out of genuine interest in my hospital or a desire to take advantage of my position there, Vanessa had intentionally targeted my facility, I was unable to confirm. She is highly qualified, my mom added hurriedly. It was a very exclusive program. Then the inevitable request arrived. Just to make sure her application is given the right attention. I was hoping you might put in a nice word for her. I inhaled deeply, bracing myself against the well-known urge to put Vanessa's needs first. I can't do that. Mom, I gave a firm explanation. Influencing the employment process, particularly for a family member, would be unethical on my part. I will be unable to participate in any decisions pertaining to Vanessa's application, even over the phone. I could feel my mother's dismay. But now you're in charge. You must have a voice. And who is employed, I answered. That's precisely why I can't get involved. I have an obligation to uphold ethical standards in my role. Like all other applications, Vanessa's will be judged on its merits. I hung up and sat in my office thinking about what may go wrong if Vanessa worked at my hospital. The personal past between us added another level of complexity to the already difficult professional boundaries. Daniel and I had supper that night and talked about the problem. What are your thoughts about perhaps seeing her every day? His look was one of anxiety as he asked. To be honest, I'm not sure, I said. A part of me is worried about the resurgence of old patterns, while another part has moved past the hurt. 9 years ago, you were a different person. Daniel softly reminded me. You've established a network of support and boundaries. Just because Vanessa is in the building doesn't mean them will go away. I made an appointment with Dr. Coleman the next week in order to work through my emotions around the circumstance. Your response is completely normal, she told me. Despite our significant healing work, family relationships still carry strong emotional energies. We talk about ways to preserve my professional connections while safeguarding my emotional health. It's important to keep your personal background and her work performance apart. Dr. Coleman suggested that she minimize and clearly define her personal interactions and evaluate her work on its own merits, in an effort to be open and honest about any potential conflicts of interest. I also spoke candidly with Dr. Lawrence on the family situation. Thank you for sharing, he said. I'll make certain that HR appropriately responds to her application without consulting you. I was notified via email 2 weeks later that Vanessa had been employed as an administrative staff member based only on her interview performance and qualifications. Additionally, the email stated that I will be delivering the welcome speech at the orientation for all incoming administrative personnel on Monday as chief of surgery. I went through phases of dread, resignation, and hesitant acceptance the weekend before orientation. In any case, I was proud of the life and career I had created. No matter how convoluted our past was, Vanessa's presence couldn't take away from that accomplishment. The morning of orientation was sunny and clear. I got up at 5 to go for my daily pre-work run in the hopes that the physical activity would calm my anxiety and help me decompress. For me, the sound of footsteps on concrete had always been calming, a place to work through difficult feelings before taking on the difficulties of the day. Back at home, I drank coffee and went over the day's procedures and meetings. There were 2 spinal fusions, a budget review for the tumor resection department, and now the orientation address. A long day, but doable. I chose a fitted charcoal suit and the pearl earrings Daniel had given me for our anniversary, making me look especially put together. In the mirror, I saw a self-assured professional. Dr. Rebecca Mitchell is the chief of surgery, instead of the neglected sister or hurt daughter I used to be. With his hands resting comfortingly on my shoulders, Daniel bid me farewell with a kiss at the door. He said simply, "Remember who you are now." The 4 words sum up my path, my development, and my hard-won tranquility. The orientation was set to take place in the main conference room of the hospital at 8 o'clock. As the room slowly filled with new hires, I arrived early and went over my notes. From where I stand close to the podium, I saw Vanessa in the first row as soon as I looked around the throng. She looked pretty much the same at 34, pretty in a traditional sense. Her blonde hair was now styled in a professional bob, and she had an anxious yet excited look. I hadn't yet caught her attention, too preoccupied to engage in lively conversation with the woman next to her. In his opening remarks, Dr. Lawrence welcomed the new employees and gave an overview of the hospital's leadership group. He went on to say, "I'm happy to introduce our Chief of Surgery, Dr. Rebecca Mitchell, who will go into further detail about the goals and accomplishments of our surgical department." I was walking toward the podium. As Vanessa realized my rank and presence, her head jerked up and her eyes widened in surprise. For a second, our eyes met. Despite the inner turmoil underneath, mine was professionally neutral, while hers was perplexed and shocked. I started my prepared remarks by giving a summary of the organization of the surgical department, our dedication to patient-centered care, and our latest developments in minimally invasive treatments. "At Johns Hopkins," I said, paused for a second before I looked it over. "We think that compassion and technical prowess go hand in hand. Our patients entrust us with their lives at their most vulnerable times. We respect that sacred trust by offering healing as well as therapy." Vanessa's expression changed from one of disbelief to one that bordered on pride while I was speaking. As I described the department's accomplishments and future objectives, she sat up straighter and kept her gaze fixed on me. "Our benchmark is excellence." I came to a conclusion. Innovation is our dedication to patients who deserve nothing less than our finest, and accountability is our profession. Greetings from Johns Hopkins, where your efforts will directly improve medicine and save lives. With my head held high, I moved away from the podium and gave the crew a courteous gesture as they cheered from all sides of the room. People were pushing in toward one another and speaking to each other as they looked from Vanessa to me. Now that we were in the same room, the family resemblance was clear. As Dr. Lawrence presented the next speaker, I crept out of the conference room and went to my office to regroup before my first surgery of the day. I needed time to analyze the emotional impact of seeing Vanessa in my professional realm, so I canceled a morning meeting. Danielle sent a text. "How was it?" "As well as one might anticipate," I answered. She was taken aback when I was going over the surgical notes. The phone rang in my workplace. Dr. Eleanor was the one. "I had a feeling that today would be difficult. You might need to talk." I thought when I replied, "Your sister's first day," she said. How did you find out? Eleanor's intuition had long since stopped surprising me, but I still asked. "Grapevine from the hospital," she laughed. "The chief of surgery and her administrator sister are already causing a stir." "Are you okay?" I said. "I'm processing." Seeing her in my personal space was odd. Eleanor gently reminded them that it was neither their space nor yours. "It's only space. Both of you deserve to live there." A knock on my office door cut off our chat. I called and bid Eleanor farewell. "Enter?" With hesitation, Vanessa walked in, appearing both professional in her new position and oddly innocent in her hesitancy. She started, "Rebecca," then corrected herself. "Do you have a moment, Dr. Mitchell?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk and answered, "Briefly, in 45 minutes, I have surgery." She took a seat, holding her new ID badge and fidgeting with the lanyard. "Your position as chief of surgery was unknown to me." "At last," she said. "When I mentioned applying here, why didn't you notify me? Would you have made a different choice?" I posed the question impartially. "I'm not sure," she said. "Perhaps it's just unexpected." "You don't know a lot about me," I said, maintaining my tone. Years of unsaid feelings simmered beneath the surface of our careful talk, including the tension between us. Vanessa answered defensively, "You always act like I did something wrong. You still treat me as the antagonist in your story while you sit in your opulent office with your important title." She had always used the same deflection, transforming my valid emotions into an assault on her. In the past, I could have made myself smaller to ease her distress, backed down, and apologized. However, I was no longer that individual. "I had major spinal surgery 9 years ago that could have ended my career or left me with permanent nerve damage," I added gently. "Instead of staying with me in the hospital, Mom and Dad decided to come to your graduation. You once wished me luck with your back thing over the phone while intoxicated from a celebratory party. Fighting a post-surgical infection by myself kept me in the hospital for 8 days, excluding Daniel and the medical personnel. That took place, Vanessa. I didn't make this up to make you feel awful. My pager rung frantically before she could reply. In the emergency room, a consultation is required. I stood up, gathered my white coat, and said, I have to leave. This will have to wait until later. After a motorcycle accident, I spent the next 5 hours in surgery extracting bone fragments that were pressing against a young man's spinal cord. Everything else was forced out of my thoughts by the necessary focus. There is family drama and old wounds, tensions, only the patient, the process, and the accuracy required to maintain function and avoid paralysis were present. I found a text from Vanessa when I came out of the OR, mentally clearer but physically drained. After your shift, may we talk? In the cafeteria, I'll wait. At 7 o'clock that night, I discovered her there, drinking coffee and gazing out the window at the fading sky. As I got closer, her countenance became unusually serious, and she looked up. I've been reflecting about what you said while I sit here. She started talking about your procedure right away. I had no idea it was so serious. I took a seat across from her since I was too exhausted to keep a professional distance. What did you believe it to be? I'm not sure, she said. When Mom and Dad discussed it, it sounded like a simple operation. Mom referred to what you were doing as an outpatient procedure. I gaped at her in shock. To avoid irreversible nerve damage, I underwent extensive spinal surgery. I spent more than a week in the hospital. It took me almost a month to be able to walk without help. Vanessa's face went white. I was never informed about that. Rebecca, I promise. They only stated that they understood why they had to attend my graduation for the first time and that you were undergoing a little surgery. I pondered whether Vanessa had not participated in my parents' disregard for my needs. That maybe she had been given a story that excused them from their decisions as well. Did they fail to tell you anything else? Slowly, I asked. We compared our wildly disparate interpretations of common family history for almost 2 hours. In the meantime, I recalled constantly getting deprioritized. Vanessa remembered a family that gave equal celebration to both daughters. She saw isolated instances where I sensed systematic dismissal. While I saw patterns, she thought that family dynamics were typical. At last, she murmured in a little voice, I never saw it. I had no idea how that felt for you. My mother's phone rang, interrupting our chat as though she had been called upon by our conversation about her. Can I take this? Please. Vanessa was the one I asked. In fact, I want to tell you something. I put the phone on speaker as soon as I responded, setting it on the table between us. Rebecca, at last, my mom said without saying hello. All day, I've been attempting to get in touch with you. Was Vanessa able to locate you? How is she finding her first day? Hello, Mom, too, I said calmly. Indeed, I've bonded with Vanessa. Fantastic. I anticipated that being at the same hospital would strengthen your bond. Rebecca, you've always been so aloof. This is precisely what your partnership requires. At her mother's description, Vanessa's eyes grew wide. Across the table, her eyes met mine. I said gently, Mom? In fact, I'm in the midst of something significant. Can I give you a call again tomorrow? Oh, too busy all the time. My mom let out a loud sigh. Just watch out for your sister there. Please. You know, she's fresh to the medical field. Like you. Not everyone can become a doctor. I said a quick farewell and hung up, observing Vanessa's expression while she took in what she had just heard. Is that how she's always spoken to you quietly? She asked. Basically, I attested. Actually, that wasn't that bad. After a prolonged period of silence, Vanessa remarked, I think I'm seeing something I've been blind to my entire life. It was the first instance of genuine sisterhood we had encountered as adults. a mutual understanding of a familial dynamic that had influenced us both differently. As we were about to depart, Vanessa stated, "I never intended to intrude on your territory here. I want you to know that, not to try to get into your life, but because Johns Hopkins is the top hospital in the area, I applied there." I said, "I believe you." And to my amazement, I meant it. "Could we try again?" With hesitation, she asked, as sisters who may not have known one another well, rather than as chief and administrator. We decided to work on our personal relationship outside of work while keeping our interaction at the hospital totally professional. It would be difficult. It would take more than one talk to clear up years of miscommunication and animosity. However, where there had previously just been suffering, I now saw a glimpse of hope. I had never seen it before. As we left Waze in the parking garage, Vanessa said, "But now that I see it, I apologize." Her straightforward and heartfelt apology was something I never anticipated. Although the past was not erased, it did pave the way for a different future in which my experience was accepted rather than discounted, and where recovery might one day be achievable. It was necessary to carefully manage both professional and personal boundaries during the first month of working in the same hospital as Vanessa. At work, we set up explicit rules. The HR director would be her direct supervisor. Not to me. We would keep our departmental responsibilities appropriately separated, using professional titles in public and first names in private. It seemed natural that staff would want to know more about our relationship. Conversations froze when we entered rooms together. Whispers followed us down the hallways, and inquiries about our familial ties surfaced in seemingly casual conversations rather than explicitly addressing the gossip. In meetings that we both attended, we decided to provide an example of professionalism. Despite our lack of personal acquaintance, we interacted in a courteous and cooperative manner. The novelty of our relationship gradually diminished as we came to accept our distinct professional identities. I started mentoring Vanessa remotely on hospital culture and healthcare administration conventions, introducing her to colleagues who could offer advice in her new position and suggesting resources. Vanessa watched me with fresh eyes as I led talks on surgical protocols, research initiatives, and patient outcome metrics at her first departmental meeting as chief. I could see her taking note of the authority I talked with and the respect my coworkers gave me, my grasp of depth of knowledge. "I'm incredibly proud of you," she wrote in a subsequent text. I should have stated that, but I don't believe I ever did. I was surprised to learn how adept Vanessa was at her administrative job. During a quarterly review meeting, her organizational skills expedited a number of laborious administrative procedures, and her marketing experience was a good fit for healthcare communication. I gave her public recognition for her efforts to increase departmental productivity. Administrator Shaw's improved intake methodology has resulted in a 30% reduction in redundant paperwork. Using her business name, I made a note. Both staff productivity and patient satisfaction have significantly increased as a result. She nodded at me briefly. But there was more real connection between us than we had experienced during years of family get-togethers. Our parents unexpectedly visited the hospital 6 weeks after Vanessa started at Hopkins. I was getting ready to scrub in for an afternoon procedure when they showed up at my office door. I said, genuinely astonished, "Mom? Dad? Why are you here?" Both our girls and their natural environment were things we wanted to see. My father gave a forced, humorous explanation. "You're a big shot around here now," Vanessa said. My father's contemptuous description of my role caused my assistant Margaret's eyes to widen a little. "In 20 minutes, Doctor, Mitchell will be getting ready for surgery," she told them forcefully but courteously. "Maybe you may arrange a visit at a later date." "Nonsense," my mother said. "Rebecca, don't you think she has time for her parents?" The ancient pattern called out to me: make accommodations, express regret, modify my requirements to satisfy their demands. However, I was no longer that individual. I said calmly, "I have a patient waiting. If it's convenient for you, I can have lunch with you at my office at 1. Until then, Margaret can show you to the cafeteria." Before my mother could reply, a resident showed there with preoperative scans that I had to go over. Her lips stiffened. He observed my parents and said, "Chief, The patient is asking some questions about the approach you're planning to use. I apologize for interrupting, I said. Not at all, Dr. Kim. Just now, my folks were heading to the cafeteria. Bring those scans to my office, please. Everyone in the room was aware of the difference between the way my parents denigrated me and how my coworkers treated me. For the first time in years, the four of us ate lunch together in my office when Vanessa joined us. In the room filled with my medical degrees, honors, and professional photos, my mother became noticeably uneasy. You're actually in charge of every surgeon. Then, looking around at the proof of my authority, my father asked, the entire surgical department is under Rebecca's supervision. Before I could respond, Vanessa did. In Hopkins history, she is the youngest chief of surgery. There was no mistaking the pride in her voice, and it was shockingly honest. Well, my mother responded, pausing awkwardly. We knew you would succeed. You always had such a strong will. Yes, I calmly agreed. I was adamant. I'm determined. But a chief of surgery isn't made of determination alone. Ability does. Knowledge does. It is leadership. What too modest to tell you? Your daughter, Dr. Eleanor, who was standing in the doorway with a file I had asked for, said that she had also invented 2 surgical methods that are now commonplace nationwide. She is more than a mere administrator. She is a truly talented surgeon, as she frequently did since her retirement. Eleanor had dropped in without warning, but the time couldn't have been more ideal. You are too... With scarcely disguised annoyance at the interruption, my mother inquired. She answered, Dr. Eleanor Winston, with a kind grin that stopped short of her eyes. Rebecca's predecessor and mentor, the parents who were unable to attend her spinal surgery must be you. You've been talked about a lot. The ensuing hush was deafening. After my parents had left and I had finished my last rounds, Vanessa and I sat down to a pot of tea in my office that evening. That's how they've always been. Have they not? Quietly, she asked. Always downplaying your accomplishments. Yes, I did confirm. Always. She said, they built me up so much that I don't think I ever noticed. I can see it plainly now, though. It marked the start of an open discussion regarding the family dynamics that had influenced us both. The first of many to come. There were no quick fixes or simple solutions. But it seemed like a win just to acknowledge reality, following years of rejection and gaslighting. We developed a new family interaction pattern throughout the ensuing months. Daniel, whose study's presence helped ease residual tensions, was a part of monthly dinners. Their attempts to recognize my professional accomplishments without instantly shifting the conversation to Vanessa's activities were evident, but occasionally awkward. Perhaps most significantly, Vanessa herself changed from defensively rejecting my experiences to eagerly seeking to understand them. When our parents reverted to their old habits, she started to step in and gently reroute the subject or draw attention to my contributions that were being undervalued. I allowed for measured reconnection while preserving clear boundaries. I had created an emotional barrier that was protective rather than punitive, and I didn't say sorry for still putting my health before the peace in the family. Following Vanessa's admission to the hospital, the first Christmas celebration felt unique. Conversations were more equal and attention was more evenly distributed. It wasn't flawless. It was moving in a direction I had long since given up on. But decades of deeply ingrained tendencies don't go away overnight. I was supposed to have a complicated spinal reconstruction, just like the one I had had 9 years prior, a year after our unplanned reconnection at orientation, as a component of her rotational administrative training. Vanessa and other non-medical employees were watching from the gallery as they learned about the surgical techniques. I had made the extraordinary decision to ask my parents to watch as well, setting them up to sit alongside Dr. Eleanor so she could explain the technical details of the procedure. As I guided the surgical team through the complex process, I could see my mother's face via the observation window. As she recognized the intricacy and accuracy of my work, her attitude changed from one of courteous attention to one of genuine AR. The procedure went well. The outlook for the patient is great. I walked out the door. My dad came over to me. He had a rather humble expression. That was remarkable. Silently, he said, I didn't know. We ought to have attended your surgery. We ought to have been present. It was an acknowledgement, but not a complete apology. The initial phase of true accountability. We had dinner together at Daniel's in my house that night. Vanessa proposed a toast. She held her glass out to me. Whose journey? She said to Rebecca. I've always respected their fortitude, and I'm just now starting to comprehend it, even if I didn't display it. You become more than just a surgeon. You turn to become a healer, a leader, and the sister I aspire to be one day. My parents also acknowledged their prior faults, which was awkward but real. When my mother finally whispered the words I never thought I would hear, her eyes glistened. We apologize for not being there for you when you most needed us. Under the table, Daniel squeezed my hand. His unspoken insistence remains unwavering. I put a fresh photo on my desk at work later that week. Daniel and Dr. Eleanor bookended the family gathering, and the four of us had dinner together. Although it wasn't a flawless portrayal of reconciliation, it was a truthful illustration of the ongoing process. From injured child to self-assured leader, the path had not been easy or straightforward. My achievement was not due to my family, but rather in spite of them. I had discovered the ability to forgive in moderation without losing sight of the past. When external permission was denied, I had developed my own validation. Above all, I had grown into the person I needed to be when I was younger, someone who was unwavering in her belief in her own value, who set limits without regretting them, and who showed compassion without compromising her dignity. I looked at the picture as I got ready for another day as chief of surgery and was struck by the thought that, like surgery, healing is a journey rather than a final goal. Sometimes the body cannot be fully restored until the incision breaks. The scar is still visible as proof of both the harm and the treatment. My sister's graduation was more significant than my operation, and 9 years later, I had found peace not in the acceptance I had so desperately sought, but in the realization that I no longer required it to be whole. How about you? Have you ever needed to set limits with relatives that didn't value you? How did you strike that challenging balance between self-defense and forgiveness? Leave a comment below with your experiences. If my story spoke to you, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. Keep in mind that sometimes the family we build is more therapeutic than the one we were born into. I appreciate you listening, and I hope your personal path to recovery and development is filled with strength.